Welcome to SEC 208, Shared Fate. In this talk, you'll learn how Google Cloud is working to enable you to move from a shared responsibility model for security in public cloud to a shared fate model, where we as the cloud provider collaborate much more strongly with you and take additional responsibility for making sure what's deployed together is in the most secure and compliant state. A core component of this ability to change how risk is transferred is providing you with production-proven blueprints for foundational infrastructure, workloads, and applications built with Google Cloud best practices and patterns so that collectively we have a much better view and understanding of the quantified risk and the security posture being deployed. I'm Chang, Senior Product Manager for the Cloud Security team. As we've seen with many customers, an ongoing desire is to get started and operate much quicker, but with also additional security so that the value of cloud can reflect in the businesses that you run. The approach we're now taking to enable and accelerate this is building out a set of opinionated security foundation and posture blueprints to automatically allow you to leverage predefined Google Cloud security best practices for your infrastructure and for your workloads. This is part of the overall Google Cloud vision in security for going even further in our partnership with our customers. We want to move the industry and help move the industry from current shared responsibility approach to a shared fate model, where we're truly partners in your success and in achieving your goals. And this won't happen overnight, but the key pieces are coming into place. First, a necessary condition for this is that the underlying cloud infrastructure is highly trusted and secure, that we're providing you with that secure, compliant platform, as well as a portfolio of security and compliance products and solutions that you can use. The good news is that in our mission to make Google the most trusted cloud, we're well along the way there. Next, we're providing customers with opinionated foundational and posture blueprints matched to the type of workloads that they need, which enable you again to build on top of the underlying services, to stack and build posture blueprints on top of landing zones, and which all have Google best practices in terms of configurations, architecture, security posture embedded with them. You're therefore able to stack these opinionated posture blueprints on top of landing zones and take advantage of the knowledge that Google's already built around security. We then take the next step and think about taking the blueprints as the basis for end-to-end solutions to solve very specific business problems. For example, web application API protections, zero trust, and beyond core enterprise solutions, and security analytics at scale. By combining these together, you're now able to get the best practices in a deployable form targeted towards solving very specific business problems. Finally, by having the combination of the blueprints and the solutions, it leads to a significant increase in the ability for you to use consistent approved end-to-end patterns for complete business processes and applications. That consistency and greater default secure configuration and best practice adoption leads to a much more quantified risk model, allows us and you to better understand the architecture and risks being deployed in your infrastructure and your workloads, and therefore allows us to take on more responsibility collaborating with you and enabling different models of risk transfer. As we launched both our risk manager and a risk protection program, this allows you, if you've adopted these patterns, to take advantage of some specific cyber insurance offerings, which will allow you to now have more options for that risk transfer and risk management. Along the evolution path of shared fate, in addition to changing how you as customers can manage risk, we see parallel transformation opportunities in other key tracks as well. Today, many customers in public cloud have complex experiences for security and governance, and we see an opportunity for use the jobs to be done framework to change these into much more consistent and complete end-to-end journeys. Similarly, many customers in public cloud have disjoint experiences managing policy and governance for both their individual instances in public cloud as well as across public cloud and on-prem. We feel again that there is an opportunity to change this fundamentally into a much more coordinated and verifiable experience. Blueprints play a key role both in moving product security from a bolted on after effect to a built in part of the underlying solution, and also for moving platform security from a set of complex configurations to increasingly secured by default. As we think about the stack from a customer perspective, as we talked about, we first build on top of that secure core Google infrastructure, and with the next layer of security products like SEC Premium, assured workloads, organization policy, VPC service controls, giving you additional capabilities differentiated in their ability to help you manage your security posture, your visibility, and your segmentation. These form the lowest layer of the security stack. On top of this baseline comes both the foundational and posture blueprints, where the foundational blueprints include org policy, resource hierarchy, networking, access segmentation, logging, detective controls, to allow you to take advantage of proven designs to build your foundational infrastructure. And on top of that, the posture blueprints cover specific sets of services aggregated together, and both the individual service-specific controls as well as the intra-services controls necessary for the workloads to work properly. The blueprints come in 3 tiers, and they differ really in their level of native support and their lifecycle management. The 3 tiers are supported blueprints, verified blueprints, and compatible blueprints. Supported blueprints are created by Google security teams and managed as products, with regular 6-month refreshes and attestation and testing of the functionality and resilience, as well as the interoperability testing between them. Verified blueprints can be created by Google teams, partner teams, or customers. The key is that the lifecycle management, as well as the attestation for fit for purpose, are the responsibility of the creating team. Compatible blueprints are just that. They're compatible, meaning they can be created by anyone, and their requirement is that they need to be from a format and also a style standpoint correctly matched to be operated with our blueprint tools and our blueprint engine. And finally, on top of the posture blueprints, we have security solutions. And these solutions address specific use cases and further add the wrappings of go-to-market collateral, best practice, application notes, so that you can adopt these for your particular use cases. We focus today really on the security foundations blueprints as well as the security posture blueprints and their relationship to each other. When we think about the core foundational blueprint, the key is to allow you to start upfront with best practices embedded in. It creates a better starting point as well for security and compliance, as the security best practices encoded in our foundation blueprint give you a great start to being compatible and meeting certain requirements within CIS, PCI DSS, NIST 853, as well as ISO 27001. In addition, they allow you to implement key security best practices and philosophies core to how Google protects itself. These key principles really fall into 3 categories. First, that all defense is always executed in depth and at scale. So multiple layers of protection separate something of interest from a potential external threat. They allow you to adopt the beyond prod model for deployment-centric infrastructure and the ability to have a zero trust model around both the infrastructure you build as well as the applications you build. And then also they de-risk the cloud deployment and adoption by moving you to these proven patterns that allow you to have moved towards a more shared fate relationship between yourselves and Google. To dive in a little bit more detail on the Security Foundations Blueprint, it provides that strong starting point we talked about in baseline. It's delivered not only in documentation, but infrastructure as code and deployable Terraform that automates, accelerates your ability to use it. It encodes those best practices and can be deployed either at an organization level or a folder level. And it has a 6-month lifecycle refresh. We deployed the very first version back in August 2020. The second version was deployed in April of this year, and then V3 will be launching in October. and the posture blueprints that we'll talk about build on top of it and are tested and verified against it. One example of the security posture blueprint is the one we're building for secured data warehousing. Secured data analytics and data warehousing are a key reason many customers come to Google, as we're differentiated in our BigQuery product and the things we do in data analytics. As you can see here, we've adopted an architecture that has the landing area and ingest, the data warehouse itself with storage and processing, classification and governance pieces, as well as security, posture, and detection for threats. In addition, there's also the optional presentation layer, which in the case of the blueprints we've built, we provide an example in the form of an AI notebook. To dive this a little bit more detail, what you see in the next level of detail of the architecture is we've segmented this into 4 different projects within the BigQuery data warehouse itself, and then separate set of projects for the AI notebook. These projects not only create resource separation, but are also their own VPC service perimeters, which allow us to manage both sensitive and non-sensitive data. The ingest contains the ability to ingest both batch and streaming data, and then de-identification of all the data so that it can be correctly classified into the non-sensitive and sensitive areas of BigQuery. We manage the IAM structures, the data encryption, and also data classification, so that using data catalog, you can have column level access control of the BigQuery data warehouse. And this architecture is based on proven production instances we've built together with some of our financial service customers, so that we have good confidence that this scales and works well for those regulated industries. If we dive into a little bit more, what is in the BigQuery data warehouse blueprint, in addition to the Terraform itself and deployable instances, it has a set of documentation that comes with it around and accessible through either the architecture center or the best practice site, quick starts, technical design docs, solution guides, the code itself with the guide for deployment of the code, Terraform code, overview decks, licensing and pricing models, public talks, the blogs, and also the application notes for specific use cases as examples to get you started more quickly. It too is on a 6-month refresh cycle, with the first version just being launched here in October, and then the V2 targeted for a Q2 2022 launch. Built on top and also available as standalone. What this means is that with each of the posture blueprints, they are first and foremost able to be compatible with our Security Foundations blueprint and tested again from an integration standpoint with that and the other posture blueprints, but also they're deployable and standalone in your own brownfield. And then they include third-party attestations around the security architecture design, the stride threat modeling, as well as being pen tested. And you'll see with this blueprint in Q4 being tested against the NIST 853 compliance standard in detail. When we think about the controls that are fundamentally built into the BigQuery data warehouse, they fall in 3 categories. Controls that manage configuration state, as misconfiguration is one of the largest sources of data breaches. We particularly provide and encode best practices for configuration of each of the services, as well as the integration and interaction of the services within the BigQuery secure data warehouse blueprint. Behavioral controls focus specifically around the design and architecture of the secure data warehouse to look at specific threats from either data exfiltration, from privilege escalation, from things that break the segmentation model that's built in, and then environmental controls. As we talked about before, the secure data warehouse blueprint can be deployed either as a standalone, in which case the environmental controls are fully encased with that particular blueprint, or if they're deployed on top of a Security Foundations blueprint, they inherit the environmental controls from the underlying core infrastructure. We're now going to move to a demo. We're going to walk you through a fully deployed secure data warehouse and highlight some of the configuration controls, the behavioral security protections, as well as the environmental controls. Here we have a demo organization in which we've deployed the Secured Data Warehouse Blueprint in its own folder. The Secured Data Warehouse Blueprint consists of 4 distinct projects. A data ingestion project, which includes cloud storage, pub sub, and data flow. A data lake project, which includes the BigQuery instance for non-sensitive data, a privileged BigQuery data warehouse, which includes cloud storage as well as the privileged BigQuery data warehouse instance, and a data governance project, which includes data catalog, key management, and data classification through DLP. When deploying these into your own brownfield or on top of the Foundation's blueprint, you can plug in the data encryption keys into your existing encryption key project, logging into your centralized logging project, and the network connections to allow the data flow templates in to your existing system. You can also run this standalone if you want to experiment and play with it. And to do that, we include 2 harness projects, which supply the data flow template and the Terraform sourcing. The security perimeters around the BigQuery data warehouse and the other projects are set up as follows. We have 3 separate perimeters, one around ingestion, one around the privileged data, and then one around data governance. In addition, we set up bridges between ingestion and governance, privilege and governance, and then privilege and ingestion. If we look at the VPC service perimeter around data ingestion, you'll see it includes the ingestion project and the data lake. It has its own defined access context levels and specific egress rules. Similarly, if we look at the VPC service perimeter around privileged data, it captures the privileged BigQuery data warehouse project, has its own access levels defined and egress rules. And then the last perimeter is around data governance, which secures the data governance project and has its own access levels defined. If we look now at the bridging, the first bridge connects the ingestion, the data lake, and governance. The second bridge connects the data lake to the privileged. And then the final bridge connects the data governance to privileged. As you can see, we've defined access policies for each of the separate VPC service perimeters. We've also used our DLP to de-identify specifically card number and card PIN data so that in the non-sensitive BigQuery instance, they can be used by lower access levels and folks with more generalized roles, separate from when the actual values are being used in the privileged data warehouse. We use data catalog with policy tags in order to further provide column level control. And you can see we use column level policy tags for person name, credit limit, and also credit card number. So we give you additional fine-grained control of what service accounts, what humans can access these pieces of sensitive data as an example. If we now look at the data lake, which has the non-sensitive data set, you can see that if we look at, again, card number and card PIN and create a query, you see de-identified version of both card PIN and card number that is still format preserving. If we now move to the sensitive data in the privileged data warehouse, if we were to look at the card PIN data, because I have the right set of accesses, you'll see the actual card PIN data within the privileged and protected BigQuery instance. However, to show you that we're using column level control, I'm now also going to try to query the card number. And here you see access has been denied because this particular user currently does not have the IAM permissions to access the card numbers. We can fix this by going back and granting the permissions for fine-grained reader on that particular column. And now if we rerun the query, you'll see we got both the PIN and the underlying card numbers. So we've now shown you the architecture example for the secure data warehouse containing 3 VPC service perimeters and both a data lake for non-sensitive data and a separate secure data set which has column level access managed through data catalog policy tags. We've now shown you a deployed version of the secure data warehouse blueprint, and we walked you through some of the key configuration, behavioral, and environmental controls. So hopefully this provides you a view of how we're embedding best practices in security as well as the architecture to give you something as a reference starting point and pattern to jumpstart your workloads in production around data warehousing and data analytics. To learn more, you can explore at cloud.google.com/security-best practices the range of our current portfolio of blueprints for foundation and for security posture. Explore the documentation as well as the Terraform repo that we've supplied, and then download kind of reference guides from a step-by-step basis. We'd highly encourage you to deploy these security blueprints into your own example organizations and folders so that you can experiment to see how they fit with your environments. And definitely encourage you to customize and use the modules of script if they create additional differentiation for your particular needs. As we talked about, these blueprints are refreshed on a 6-month cycle, so we highly encourage you to also feed back to us where you've seen gaps and things that you'd want to see in future iterations. And we can put that in the backlog, and many of your needs may show up in future versions of the blueprint so that you can use a standard blueprint as opposed to one that you've branched yourself. And lastly, we'd encourage you to start trialing the Security Command Center Premium as it provides an overall cloud security posture management around not only your organization, but these multi-project and folder-centric posture blueprints as well. Thank you so much for your time and the opportunity to share with you what we're thinking about on the shared fate standpoint, as well as some of those core blueprints that allow you to jumpstart and get started with the best practices and patterns that can help you be more successful.